Good evening, barflies and lounge lizards, and welcome to the Atomic Snack Bar. I'm your host, Mr. R. Sterling, and tonight we'll be discussing 5 wonderfully wacky monster movies, and we are talking next level wacky only here. But this isn't a top list or a ranking, just 5 films I've been wanting to discuss in chronological order. And number 5 on the list is The Little Shop of Horrors from 1960. Directed by the great Roger Corman, The Little Shop of Horrors is a dark comedy, borderline creature feature, and it tells the story of a lowly florist assistant who comes across and begins to cultivate a rare and exotic plant. Turns out, the plant can not only talk, but has a very particular diet of human blood. And the plant, Audrey Jr., brings fame, acclaim, and a body count to Mushnick's flower shop. And though this one isn't a monster mash like most that will appear on the list, it's certainly wacky and a whole lot of fun. I mean, who doesn't like watching a giant plant eat people? Not someone I'd go bowling with, I'll tell you that. Written by Charles Griffith, who also wrote A Bucket of Blood and Death Race 2000, the film was shot for around $30,000, which would be about $300,000 today. And much of it was shot in just 2 days using leftover sets from the aforementioned A Bucket of Blood, a horror comedy also directed by Mr. Corman. The screenplay started out with the title The Passionate People Eater, which I must say, I kinda dig. Writer Charles Griffin would also voice Audrey Jr., though this wasn't the original intention. Originally, he was just there to provide voice reference for the actors. He stood off screen calling out Audrey's lines that were to be dubbed over in post. Well, his performance got a few laughs, and since Corman was known for being frugal, Griffith's performance was used. And speaking of performance, this film has an incredible cast. Too many to highlight them all, but I wanted to mention actor and director Mel Wells, who directed Lady Frankenstein and did much of the writing and voice acting for the dub of Spectre-Man. We also have a young Jack Nicholson who plays the dentist office masochist. This is easily one of the standout roles of the film and one of my favorite Nicholson performances. And finally, I'd like to highlight the wonderful character actor Dick Miller, who has a small role as a flower-eating weirdo. Definitely the other standout role of the film for your sleazy tiki host. Miller was actually offered the starring role of Seymour, but he turned it down because he feared that little green men would crash a snowplow into the set. But he did actually eat the flowers. That's a trooper right there. The Little Shop of Horrors would go on to become a true cult classic and received a musical in '82, a remake film in '86, an animated series in 1991, and most interestingly, for me, a 3-issue comic book series in 1995 released by Roger Corman's Cosmic Comics. And I'm going to cut it off there because there was actually too much information on this one. And number 4 on the list is Kiss Me Quick from 1964. Written and directed by Peter Perry Jr. under the alias of Seymour Tookus, Kiss Me Quick is a high-concept drama and probably the most realistic portrayal of alien life ever put on screen. And it tells the classic story of an alien from the Buttless galaxy sent to Earth to find the perfect woman. He ends up teleporting right into the lab of a mad scientist who talks like a Dracula, and as luck would have it, is working on creating the perfect woman himself. And in order to show off his work, each of the ladies perform a soft striptease and dance all 60s style to swinging rock music. And I know what you're thinking, but no, this is not a remake of Singing in the Rain. But not all of Dr. Breedlove's experiments have gone exactly as planned. A few of the ladies have ended up turning into monsters, including a vampire, a mummy, and a Frankenstein. Director Peter Perry also directed such beloved classics as Knockers Up and Cycle Vixens. Then we have producer and distributor Harry Novak, who produced the film, also under the name Seymour Tookus. Novak produced films such as Wham Bam, Thank You Spaceman, which I've wanted to cover on the channel for years now, and Please Don't Eat My Mother. I could probably do an entire episode on the works of Novak, he was so prolific, but this was his first film. And Kiss Me Quick began under the title Dr. Breedlove or How I Learned to Stop Worrying in Love, in order to parody Dr. Strangelove from '64. But then it was changed to Kiss Me Quick as tribute to Billy Wilder's Kiss Me Stupid. Novak said that he and director Perry went to local, let's say clothing optional establishments in order to find the cast. The two soon discovered that many of them were actresses already, trying to make ends meet between gigs. And in a sort of related note, the film has often been credited to movie legend Russ Meyer. Meyer, though, had no involvement with the film. This is a fun, and actually funny, little nudie cutie, but be warned, the monsters are barely in it. And I'd like to take a quick moment to thank my buddy R.P. Whalen, who helped me track down a copy after years of searching. Ray is a filmmaker and was behind the documentary Mondo Collecto, which features different oddball collectors and their oddball collections. It even has a segment featuring Ted V. Michaels. If you dig quirky documentaries like I do, it's a good one. And number 3 on the list is Monsters Crash the Pajama Party from 1965. Directed by David L. Hewitt, who is also known for The Wizard of Mars, Journey to the Center of Time, and The Mighty Gorga, Monsters Crash the Pajama Party is a comedy monster movie short film. And it tells the story of a group of pesky young people who decide to spend the night in a supposedly haunted house. Turns out, house isn't haunted, but it does have a mad scientist who is working on the groundbreaking experiment of turning humans into gorillas, as any rational person would. He also just happens to have some monster sidekicks, including a vampire girl, a werewolf, and a wacky gorilla, all of which look fantastic. Now this really is an interesting case, because as mentioned before, it's a short film, but it was shown as part of a midnight spook show by illusionist Joe Carston. And if you aren't familiar with the spook show, it was essentially an interactive traveling stage show that featured performers, often an illusionist, and simulated seances, which began in the early 1930s. But somewhere around the late 1930s, a movie was added into the mix, very William Castle-esque in nature. In Monsters Crash the Pajama Party, towards the end of the film, the mad scientist would order his minions to find him a new girl to experiment on. Costume actors would then enter the audience and abduct a planted victim and take her back into the film, which would then resume. Director Hewitt got his start in the world of spook shows, working as an illusionist for Dr. Jekyll's Strange Show when he was a teenager. He would later become interested in the movie industry and would write a sci-fi film called Journey into the Unknown. And according to the book Science Fiction Directors by Dennis Fisher, Hewitt then gave the script to Forrest J. Ackerman, who then passed it along to I.B. Melchior, who revamped it into The Time Travelers from 1964, which featured the most erotically creepy androids of all time. Hewitt's next film, Journey to the Center of Time from 1967, is said to be a remake of The Time Travelers, though I wonder if perhaps it's more so a case of Hewitt making the film he originally wanted to make. Whatever the case may be, Hewitt knew how to make a movie about a gorilla, and being a robot gorilla who makes YouTube videos, I would know. And one last thing of note, Monsters Crash the Pajama Party was released on DVD by Something Weird Video, and it is one of the coolest DVD releases I have ever gotten. Just slam full of spook show goodies and extras. If you can still find it, the extras alone are worth the price of admission. And on that, we should take a break.
We've all been staying up night, playing with this mighty men and monster maker kit. With this kit, your children can combine different chests, legs, and heads. Yes. They can color in scales, hair, or alligator skin. Very nice. They can make hundreds of monsters and heroes. Personally, I prefer the monsters.
What if man had turned out differently? Then where would he wear Levi's stay-pressed slacks or Levi's fashion jeans? Would he put Levi's herringbone on his fins? Levi's stripes on his wings? How could he enjoy Levi's flares with Dacron polyester? What would he put in the pockets of our stay-pressed bush jeans? What would he do with Levi's hopsack? Come to think of it, if man had turned out differently, would there even be a Levi's? There would have been no 1850 gold rush, no man named Levi Strauss, no need for him to invent the world's toughest pair of pants. Men, we're glad you walk on two legs. Otherwise, you'd never get the chance to wear a pair of Levi's.
And number 2 on the list is Santo and Blue Demon versus the Monsters from either 1969 or 1970. There are many conflicting reports on the matter. IMDb says 1970, the Monsters in Motion DVD release says 69, and the ever-trustworthy Wikipedia says 69 on Santo's page and 70 on Blue Demons. Directed by Gilberto Martinez Solares, oh, that was a pronunciation, a writer, director, and cinematographer, Santo and Blue Demon vs. the Monsters is a superhero luchador monster mash. And it tells the heartwarming story of our titular heroes Santo and Blue Demon as they go up against a resurrected mad scientist who has put together a small army of reanimated monsters and a clone of Blue Demon in order to get some revenge. For it was apparently El Santo who had killed him in the first place. Not sure if that happened in an earlier film or just off camera, but it does not affect the awesomosity of this film. And let me tell you, this is a monster mash for the ages. It's just full of fantastic Universal-esque monsters, from a mummy to a vampire to a werewolf to a creature from the Black Lagoon-esque Cyclops. You don't see that every day, but most importantly is Mustache Frankenstein. Easily one of my favorite Frankenstein monsters of all time. Watching this film feels a lot like watching Batman 66, just with monsters in a slightly more serious tone. And of course, the cast features the legendary El Santo, a luchador, movie star, folk hero, and someone I've been searching for an action figure of for years. Santo appeared in over 50 films, including Santo and Blue Demon vs. Dracula and the Wolfman, Santo vs. the Martian Invasion, and the Fury of the Karate Experts. Then we have Blue Demon, who was also a well-known luchador and movie star. He kinda plays the sidekick in this one though, but he had several solo films of his own. The director of the film, whose name I won't even try to pronounce again, was quite prolific, having directed somewhere around 150 films, and he wrote at least half as many. And this includes Blue Demon and the Female Invaders, as well as The World of the Dead, which also featured Santo and Blue Demon. Trivia is almost non-existent for this one, but I will say, without exaggeration, this may be the most important film you have ever seen. And number one on the list is Saturday the 14th from 1981. Directed by the great Howard Cohen, more on him in a moment, Saturday the 14th is a monster comedy and spoof film and easily one of the best ever made. And it tells the story of a normal American family who inherit a home from a mysterious uncle. An equally mysterious book containing actual monsters is soon found, and the sleazy Gillman action begins. This one is just slam full of not only traditional style monsters, but also completely unique beasties and things that just go fridge raiding in the night. We have a mummy, the aforementioned sleazy creature from the Tub Lagoon, a TV that plays only Twilight Zone reruns, an exterminator that may or may not be but totally is Dr. Van Helsing, and Jeffrey Tambor as a vampire. This one was released by Roger Corman's New World Pictures and was produced by Julie Corman. Not to mention, it stars Richard Benjamin of Quark and Westworld fame. Now back to director Howard Cohen. Cohen was not only a director, but also a writer, having written 3 of the 4 Deathstalker films. He even directed the highly underrated 4th film, Deathstalker 4, Match of Titans. So that right there should tell you it's all kinds of awesome. And if you don't agree, well, you're dead to me. No, I kid. Mostly. The effects in this one range from very good to low budget but extremely charming. Everything from rubber masks to complex creature costumes. And the creature effects were done by Rick Straighten and a Steve Neal. Straighten also worked on the 3rd Ninja Turtles movie, Galaxy of Terror, and the Alien Nation TV series. Also of note, he apparently did some work for Pink Floyd for their 1979 tour in support of The Wall. Now the other effects artist Steve Neal also has a very impressive resume, having worked on Laser Blast, Battle Beyond the Stars, The Return of Swamp Thing, and Star Trek VI. This was an absolute favorite of mine as a kid, and probably the first Monster Mash movie I ever saw. And I always found it so silly that the family was trying to stop the monsters, whereas I wanted to go live with them. And that's all the time we have for this week. Let me know some of your favorite wacky monster movies. If this one does well, it could easily become an ongoing series. Please like, comment, subscribe, watch the skies, and stay atomic.